Hi, I am Leora from Womankind, and I'm wishing you a warm welcome to Cyclical Living Unwrapped series, where we explore the gifts and challenges of cyclical life with experts in the field of menstruation, perimenopause, and cyclical living. Today, I am hugely happy to be welcoming Abi Denyer-Bewick. And Abi is a neurodivergent AuDHD sea creature. I love this description, with a deep commitment to the cyclical nature of life. Abi is part of the Red School faculty and has mentored hundreds of women through the Menstruality Leadership Programme with Red School. Abi works with groups and individuals as a menstruality coach and menstrual medicine circle facilitator and supervisor. Abi is passionate about the value of community and the importance of hearing the full range of menstrual experiences. And Abi also consults with creating safer, gender diverse spaces and queering the cycle. She holds a kind, welcoming space for people to experience a deep, nourishing intimacy with themselves through their cycle. Welcome, Abi. Welcome. It makes me quite teary reading your.
I see.
Beautiful. Good to see you.
Yeah, and you. It's always funny to hear your own bio back, isn't it? It's like, really? Is that me? It's funny.
Well, yes, it certainly puts you as an expert in the field of menstruations.
Gosh.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
So if we dive straight in, yeah, would you love to share, or would love to hear your summer superpower?
So yeah, this is an interesting one because I've always had quite a complex relationship to summer. It's probably always been my most challenging in a season. But I think I had a very strong experience of my last or this cycle. I'm day 28 today, so this cycle, my summer was very clear in my experience, and the thing that I really experienced as a superpower was the kind of expansive sort of generosity, which felt like it, what I've always sort of known theoretically or heard in other people's experiences. I really kind of experienced myself, a sense of like a capacity and generosity towards like the world and other individuals in the world, and a sort of generosity and capacity for myself and holding myself. And I had a kind of a tricky situation came up, and I've just been reflecting as I've come into my autumn. I was really reflecting, thank God that happened during my summer, and I don't think I've ever really appreciated like summer for that, or appreciated that particular capacity that felt just really called on. So yeah, many more summers like that, please.
It's interesting, isn't it, though, as for as many years as you've been working with your cycle, how it always surprises us.
Yeah.
There's always something new, something to show us, isn't
there? Definitely, and to just be appreciative of when the tricky moments of life coincide with the time that you have just a little bit more juice for meeting it. So yeah.
So you've said that your relationship with summer hasn't always been the easiest. What trips you up?
I think it's it's almost like it's the same energy that I engaged with in that really kind of delightful sense. But more often my experience is that it feels very kind of scattered and chaotic, and I know that some of that is a neurodivergent thing, and there can sometimes be just a real longing for autumn, for things which is my lived experience of the outer seasons as well. I'm not a great fan of the kind of actual summer, so yeah, it can just, I guess it sort of trips me up in the sense of it just feels like spinning in circles or something. like there's sort of like a lot of like stuff in the system, but it's very undirected and unfocused, and yeah, it feels messy in a slightly frustrating kind of way.
Yeah. I'm curious how your relationship with your cycle, and particularly what you're describing in summer, how that shifted with more awareness of the neurodivergent.
Yeah, I think it gave it a context that was more than like, oh, I'm just really bad in the summer, or I just, you know, particularly in relation to the kind of the sort of creative nature of the cycle. It would be like, oh, I have, you know, all the ideas and I can never manifest anything, and all these kinds of stories. And now I recognize that it's, you know, it's more about where I need to hold myself more, like with a kind of balance of sort of tenderness and rigor, I suppose. That it's like, no, come on, like you can't just be like, oh, my summers are really chaotic because I have ADHD. It's like the story doesn't end there. It's like, okay, so what does that mean? I can accept that that's partly why it's so challenging for me, and so how can I meet that in a kind but somewhat disciplined sort of way. And to have a positive imprint like through this cycle, which I maybe get every fourth cycle or something, feels like, oh, okay, like there's, because I'm saying to you like, oh, I recognize it as the same kind of energy actually.
Yeah.
It's quite like that. That's only kind of come to me as I'm reflecting on it now. It's like, oh, well, maybe I can use that and work with that another time. I'm not going to say in my next cycle, because that feels a bit too trying or ambitious or something, but like perhaps.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's keeping that open mind and heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got this imprint of what can be.
But it's not going to be every time.
Not.
No, especially you know, I'm 44, especially not now. So
well,
yeah,
this is it. Yeah, the would you say perimenopause is there?
No, I think it's like just ahead somewhere. My cycles are still very regular, and I think it's probably there psyche wise, you know, and in the sort of, you know, red school language of like the quickening, I definitely feel within that.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing particularly physical changing at the moment. So
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how those summers.
Yes. So a few more chances to try and like, yeah, be in that like generous kind of like big space. Yeah.
Check back in a year's time.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have said that you feel at home in autumn, both outer and inner. So what supports your autumn self?
Space. So much space. And time. Yeah, time alone. I mean, I need quite a lot of time alone all the time anyway. But I think if I and my life is quite designed around those needs, which is I'm very fortunate. But I think if I don't have space in autumn, it's, yeah, I can get that really like wanting to kind of escape my skin kind of feeling, especially by like this day 28 kind of time. So if I can, yeah, create space, and space in the sense of less like demands, like I find when I have a lot of people like depending on me for things, or asking for stuff, or then that's the really hard. I just need space for myself. Yeah. I can't think of another way to sort of say it. It just needs, yeah.
So was that space from yourself or space for yourself?
Space for myself, like sort of, I suppose like more unstructured time, or more, lenient timetables of like, yeah, being able to flow a little bit more with what my energy is needing, I guess.
And that's part of the skill, isn't it, of planning around our cycles. It's
when we can, when
when
they're predictable enough, and not getting too attached to that either. So yeah, it's a dance.
Okay. So we're reaching winter. Rest. Well, okay. The menstruality call out to everyone who experiences a menstrual cycle is rest. What does rest look like for you?
I love that question, because so often it can be perceived as like, oh, it just had to be lying down, doesn't it? and actually it's so, it is so individual. So for me, I think it's sort of, it kind of follows from that spaciousness that I need in the autumn. And then rest is again being able to do what I need to do moment to moment, like unprescribed time, or so it might be, so it feels restful to me to be on my own. It feels restful for me to be in the sea a lot. It feels restful to be in nature. Sometimes it feels restful to like lie still on the ground or on the floor, and darkness. I guess that like all of those things are, I probably would lean into quietness for rest. And I don't, I'm not much for quietness. Like I like to work with the radio on, or a few different sounds from all over the place, and whereas I have a lower tolerance for that, I think, when I need. So I guess rest is also tuning out from external noises, social media, and ongoing attempts to use my phone less during my inner winter. Haven't nailed it. But it definitely, I notice when I do use my phone during that time, it feels profoundly unrestful. So that's feedback to try and change that behavior for sure.
I'm when we talk about winter and we talk about resting at that time when we're bleeding, when would you describe your winter happens for you?
Pretty much, sometimes it can feel right at the end of my cycle. Sometimes it can feel in the sort of voidy space. But mainly it's like day one. It's like when everything just drops down and in, and there's that kind of physical down and in, and there's the sort of psyche down and in, and closing the door to everything else. So that tends to be, and I've never had particularly long bleeds. My bleeds are generally over after 2.5 days or 3 days. So that's probably my challenge, and then I can be like, "Whoa, cool, yeah, let's go." And it's nice to try, and it's good practice for me to try and prolong the inner temple time beyond the actual bleeding.
I ask because it just gives, it's interesting to have a more expansive view of what that winter period, around your period is. So because it's not prescriptive, is it?
No, and I think when you speak to people who bleed for maybe 6 or 7 days, and there's a real inner time for all of those days, and I have to sort of remember, I could really try and do that, and consider my spring starting on maybe day 5, not day 3. I mean, sometimes it feels really fine to just sort of follow that, but other times I can like really follow it on day 3 and kind of feel a bit like lost and exhausted on day 5. You know, it would be like this kind of peak and then like a bit of a crash. It varies, but it's something I'm mindful around, like what it would be like to rest or take spaciousness for longer, not book everything in for day 4 because you've taken time out on day 1 and 2, you know, all these little habits.
It's a challenge though, isn't
it? For sure.
Yeah. Because I've been curious over the years of how that threshold of stepping from winter to spring looks and how wobbly it can be for so many people. How is that time for you generally?
Yeah, I don't particularly struggle with that crossover in the way that is really like a common experience for so many people who bleed. For me, I mean, I have this very strong experience usually on day 3 of the kind of renewal and energy coming back in and like some relief. Like sometimes my bleed can be quite sort of dark emotionally. Like I think I don't really experience the sort of, you know, premenstrual kind of darkness or despair, but sometimes that can come for me on day 1 and day 2. So I think that can exacerbate the experience of day 3. That's a bit like, oh, thank goodness I'm out of that kind of psychic hole. And that feels so good that it overshadows any kind of wibbly wobbly kind of crossover. So yeah, that's not too challenging. Actually, that time for me, it feels mostly relief, I think I would say.
Okay, that's yeah, I can really hear. If your winter can be dark, then oh, the joys of spring.
Yeah. Yeah, like, oh, there's a daffodil, brilliant. Let's do this.
Give me a tulip.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, so yeah. So your joys of spring. So how do they look?
My joys of spring. Yeah. So start with this kind of relief and a little bit of like, holding the reins to sort of not go too wild too quickly or do too much, you know. Think I have capacity beyond what I do have, but I really like spring. I think I feel very connected to the kind of transitional seasons within me and in the kind of external seasons. I like I like the moving and the evolving into something else. The transitory sort of nature of it rather than the more stable and set times of the winter and summer. So spring feels I feel very connected to the kind of innocence in spring and the sort of ideation and creativity and that sense of possibilities. Like that feels very full of promise, and I'm sort of feeling like sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of like naivety and like within that sort of innocence, which I think then when I have the kind of chaotic and scattered experience of summer, I'm like, oh, you really thought that like something cool was going to happen or this was going to evolve one way or another, and like, oh, it didn't. Whereas so spring can feel exciting and juicy. I like the way my sexuality feels in the spring. That's very playful. It's quite a good place for me, spring.
Yeah, I know I'm hearing. So out of the seasons, where do you feel most at home?
Yeah, for a long time it was sort of always autumn. It was that kind of coming internal again and kind of dropping and gathering. And now, like, you know, through these reflections, I think probably spring is like my autumn feels like it's getting grittier, which may be a kind of quickening aspect. Like I really have to have the space.
Just for clarity for anyone listening, Red School describe the perimenopause phase as the quickening. So lots of information about that in Wise Power.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think probably spring is like my yeah, it feels, and I suppose there's, you know, there probably is something of like the contrast now of spring and autumn. You know, as I move into a later stage in life, there's, you know, there's probably something that I'm still like enjoying the juiciness of, and kind of holding on to, you know, not in some good ways and probably in some like less good ways, or, you know, probably some yeah, so probably some parts I don't want to let go of, you know, probably some grief in some of that, probably some internalized ageism and all of that, and also, you know, maybe it is just a space that I can remember those parts and engage with them in a like in a real way without pathologizing it all and making it a problem. It's actually fine. So I think that's all in there for full disclosure. Yeah.
I can hear some relief in there though.
Yeah.
A possibility.
Yeah, I think so. It's a playground for connecting to those parts that still live inside of us, I guess. Yeah.
And in reality, we'll never lose.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
We will continue to whatever age with this cyclical nature.
Exactly.
Oh, Abi, where can everyone find out more about your work?
So I have a website, which is just abidenyer-bewick.co.uk, which probably needs more updating, but there is you can contact me through that, and yeah, has some details about the work I do, and also my Instagram, which is mainly pictures of my morning sea swims. But
they are beautiful. They are
but that is what drives me and keeps me resourced to do the work that I do. So yeah, you can also be in touch with me there. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. So if this conversation has given you an inkling, given you a bit of a drive to explore your own seasons and you're navigating perimenopause, you might enjoy our Womankind's self-directed online course, Perimenopause Unwrapped. It's an opportunity to dive deeper into the workings of perimenopause and how you might bring some compassion and care to this often wibbly time of life. So for more information, you can go to woman-kind.co.uk. So that's woman-kind.co.uk, or drop us an email and you'll find all the details below. So thank you so much again, Abi.
It's a pleasure.
Out there.